Your entire future in America can vanish in an instant. One wrong move with your F1 visa and you could find yourself on the next flight home. But don't worry, I've been there, done that, and got the deportation scare to prove it. And in this video, I'm going to walk you through the 5 most devastating F1 visa mistakes that could not only get you deported, but also banned from entering the US permanently. But more importantly, I'm going to show you exactly how to avoid them. But first, there is one thing we need to address, because if you fall into this trap, it will shatter your American dream. Imagine this: you've just landed in the US and you're pulled aside by immigration. Suddenly, you're in a small room being grilled by about everything. What do? One wrong word could send you back home. I know that because I was pulled into that room and survived, but many don't. Now, if you think you're safe because you have a visa, think again. Getting the visa is the easiest part. Keeping it is the real challenge. And even if you already have a visa, stick around, because I guarantee you'll learn at least one thing that will make you go like, wait, what? I didn't know that. So when immigration officers stop you, here's what you do. Everyone will be watching everything you're doing. You must remain calm. Never lie about anything, no matter how silly it may seem, because it'll bite you back. And always comply with the immigration officers. They're just doing their jobs. And the moment they feel resistance coming from you, things will get really, really hard. Now that you walked into the US, let's address the 5 things that will get you deported faster than you can click off this video, right? So let's do it. Mistake number 1, choosing the wrong school. Now, you probably are thinking, how can choosing a school be a mistake? Isn't that just like my personal preference? Well, let me tell you a little story. When I first came to the US, I was so excited about the idea of studying here that I didn't do enough research on the school I chose to study. It was the biggest mistake I made by far, like huge. You see, the school I picked, it wasn't exactly reputable. In fact, it had such a bad reputation that we were constantly scared of losing our credentials. But why does this matter? Well, it matters because US Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, keeps a close eye on schools that accept international students. If a school loses its certification to host F1 students, guess what happens to all the international students studying there? That's right, they're out of status immediately. No ifs, ands, or buts. But it gets worse. If you leave the country and try to come back, immigration officers might give you a hard time because you were, studying in that particular school. I've seen students get denied entry, have their visas revoked, and in some cases even get banned from entering the US for years. So how to avoid this nightmare scenario? Here are 3 quick tips. Check if the school is SCVP certified. This is non-negotiable. If it's not on the list, don't even consider it. It doesn't matter how cheap it is. Look up the school's track record. How long have they been certified? Have they had any issues with certification in the past, right? Research the school's reputation amongst other international students. Forums, social media groups, and alumni networks are great resources for this. Remember, your choice of school isn't just about education, it's about maintaining your legal status in the US. Choose wisely. Mistake number 2, violating work restrictions. So let's talk about everyone's favorite topic, money, or more specifically, how to earn it without getting kicked out of the country. And I get it, studying here is expensive. There's tuition, rent, food, books. It all adds up pretty fast. And when you see your American classmates working part-time jobs, it's kind of tempting to think, hey, why can't I do that too? Let me tell you a secret why. The number 1 reason students get deported in the US is unauthorized work. I've seen it happen. A friend of mine thought she could get away with working a few hours as a nanny, cash under the table, no one would know, right? Not so much. She got caught, and faster than you can say deportation, she wasn't playing back home. So in short, you actually can work, but, and this is a big but, you have to follow some very specific rules. As an F1 student, you are allowed to work on campus for up to 20 hours per week while school is in session, and full-time during breaks. Off campus, that's a whole different ballgame. So how do you stay on the right side of the law while working as a student? Here are the key things to remember. On-campus work is your safest bet. It's always going to be, but make sure it's actually on campus and related to the school. For off-campus work, you need authorization. This usually comes in the form of a CPT or OPT. CPT stands for Curricular Practical Training, or OPT, Optical Practical Training. Never ever work without proper authorization. It's not worth the risk. And here's a pro tip. If you're struggling financially, talk to your school's international student office. They might know about scholarships or other forms of aid that you are eligible for. Remember, the goal is to get your degree, not to make a quick buck. Don't let a temporary financial struggle jeopardize your entire future here in the US. Third mistake is neglecting to maintain full-time student status. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Duh, of course I'm a full-time student. That's why I'm here in the first place. But it's not always that straightforward as you might think, and this actually trips up more students than you can think, myself included. Let me tell you about a time that I almost got this thing messed up. It was my second semester, and I was feeling a bit overwhelmed. I thought, hey, maybe I can just drop one class to lighten my load. And that was a huge mistake. You see, dropping below full-time enrollment, even for a single semester, can throw your entire F1 status into jeopardy. And once you're out of status, getting it back, it's a nightmare. So what counts as full-time, generally speaking, is 12 credit hours per semester for undergrads, 9 credit hours per semester for grad students. But here's where it gets a little bit tricky. Some classes might not count towards this total. Online classes, for instance, have special rules. And if you're in your final semester, the rules might be different. So how do you stay on the right side of this rule? Here are a couple tips. Always consult with your DSO, the designated school official, before making any changes to your course load. If you're struggling with your courses, seek help immediately, very early. Use tutoring services, talk to your professors, do whatever you need to do to avoid dropping classes. Keep track of your credit hours each semester. Don't assume your academic advisors know about F1 requirements. Double check everything yourself. And here's a final bonus tip. If you absolutely must drop below full-time status due to medical reasons or academic difficulties, there are ways to do it legally. And I can't stress this enough. You must get approval from your DSO first. You gotta remember, your F1 status is like a house of cards. Pull out the wrong card, in this case your full-time student status, and the whole thing comes crashing down. The fourth mistake is overstaying your visa. It seems simple, but the expiration date you see on your visa is not necessarily the date you need to leave the US. Confused? I've seen brilliant students, people with amazing potential, throw it all away because they misunderstood this one simple rule. Let me break it down for you. Your F1 status generally ends 60 days after you complete your program of study. This is called the grace period. It's designed to give you time to prepare for departure, transfer to another school, or change to another visa status. But here's where people mess this up. They confuse the visa expiration date with their status end date. They think that the grace period is for job hunting. It's not. That's what OPT is for. They assume they can stay as long as they are enrolled in classes. No, your I-20 has an end date for a reason. So how do you avoid this mistake? Here are a couple tips. Know your program end date. This is on your form I-20. Understand the difference between your visa expiration date and your status end date. If you need more time to complete your studies, apply for a program extension before your current program end date. If you're planning to start OPT, apply early. Your OPT application must be received by USCIS before the end of your 60-day grace period. And here's a pro tip. Set multiple reminders for yourself. Put it in your phone, your calendar, write it on a sticky note, and stick it on your forehead if you have to. Just don't forget it, because here's the harsh reality. If you overstay your visa, even by a single day, you will start accruing unlawful presence. And that, my friends, can lead to being barred from entering the US for 3, 10, or in some cases permanently. Don't let a simple misunderstanding, I guess, or forgetfulness cost you your future in the US, right? Know your dates, plan ahead, and always be cautious. Mistake number 5, not maintaining accurate records. Now, I know what you're thinking. Record keeping, really? That's one of the top 5 mistakes? I know, it's a sneaky one. It's not as dramatic as working illegally or overstaying your visa, but it is just as devastating. Let me tell you about a friend of mine, brilliant guy, top of his class, but he was, let's say, a little challenged when it came to being organized, right? Long story short, he lost his form I-20. No big deal, right? Wrong. Like, it turned into a bureaucratic nightmare that almost cost him his visa. As an F1 student, you're not just a student. In the eyes of the US government, you are also a record keeper, and the records you need to maintain go way beyond just your class schedule and grades. Here's a quick rundown of what you need to keep track of: your passport and visa, your Form I-20, your I-94 records, any employment authorization documents, records of your entry and exit from the US, proof of enrollment and academic records, financial documents showing that you are supporting yourself or how you're supporting yourself. And here's the kicker: you need to keep these records not just while you're a student, but for years afterwards. Why? Because if you ever want to return to the US, apply for another visa, or adjust your status, you might need to prove that you maintained your F1 status properly throughout your whole stay. So, how do you avoid this mistake? Here are some tips. Create both physical and digital copies of all important documents you have. Store physical copies in a safe place and back up, digital copies in the cloud, I guess. Update your records regularly. Anytime something changes, your address, your major, your funding source, update your records and inform your DSO. Keep detailed records of any on-campus employment, including start and end dates, hours worked, job descriptions. If you travel outside the US, keep records of your trips, including dates, reasons for the travel. And here's a pro tip: create a visa diary. Every time something significant happens related to your status, a meeting with your DSO, a change in your study plans, a job offer, write it down. This can be incredibly helpful if you ever need to reconstruct your history in the US. In the immigration world, documentation is everything. The government won't take your word for it. They want to see the papers. So keep them safe, keep them organized, and keep them up to date. And remember, your F1 visa isn't just a piece of paper in your passport. It's your key to incredible opportunities, world-class education, career prospects, lifelong friendships, and experiences that will shape the rest of your life. But here's the thing: navigating the F1 visa system successfully isn't just about avoiding mistakes. It's about being proactive, staying informed, and always thinking ahead. So in this video here, I dive deep into an overlooked loophole F1 visa holders can take advantage of to get an OPT and work legally in the US.